Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to the US military is facing historic struggles in recruitment. Now, I never thought I'd see this because, it seems I would have thought if you left high school, you didn't want to go to college, you didn't have anywhere to live maybe, or you just were just a patriotic person, joining the military is perfect because you get housing, I believe, you get fed, you get all your meals, I think you get healthcare, and they pay you. So I would have thought the military would be a really attractive prospect for young people, and not just young people, I think the cutoff age for joining the military is like 30 or something like that, 35, something like that. So I never thought I would see, the military facing, a big struggle with recruitment, especially because there's been, a bit of a lot of job losses, especially in tech, and a lot of small businesses have closed down after COVID. I would have thought that, the US military would be booming and stuff, like a lot of recruitment would be happening. So I'm eager to find out what's going on. Why is the military facing these difficulties? And if you have any personal anecdotes or insights, let me know in the comments, because this is something I'm quite interested in. It's going to be a very interesting one. And by the way, guys, if you enjoy the channel, check out the Patreon, loads of exclusive content. If you want to help the channel grow, please like and subscribe. Let's do it.
Welcome back on this Independence Day as members of our armed forces are being honored and celebrated at the White House and around the country. The U.S. military is in the middle of what is a massive recruiting drought. In 2022, the U.S. Army had its most difficult recruiting year since it
Wow, so it's the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. So not just one particular branch.
ended the draft in 1973. Other branches are struggling too, leaving the Army, Navy, and Air Force roughly 30,000 recruits short of their goals.
Wow.
There are all sorts of explanations for the shortfall, including the pandemic, a tight labor market, but one reason appears to be the experiences of veterans themselves. According to the Wall Street Journal, more and more veterans are urging family members against enlisting. That does not bode well for an Army where nearly 80% of all new recruits have a family member who served. And joining me now is the retired...
Wow, so do veterans not feel like they've been looked after when they, get back from tour or they leave? What are the negative experiences that veterans are going through?
Retired Army Colonel Jack Jacobs. He is, of course, a Medal of Honor recipient and an NBC News military analyst. Colonel Jack, on this holiday, as always, we say thank you for your service. And this is a heck of a headline about the all-volunteer force in the U.S. right now. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, told the Wall Street Journal about prospective recruits. He said the following: influencers are not telling them to go into the military. Moms, dads, uncles, coaches, pastors do not see it as a good choice. What's your take?
Well, it used to be a good choice, and we had generations of people joining the military because previous generations had. I did because my father had served in the Second World War in the Army in New Guinea and the Philippines, and I thought it was my obligation to serve. But a lot has happened since we decided to have an all-volunteer force. The result has been far fewer people going into the military to start with, which leaves far fewer people trying to influence those who would otherwise come in. It's interesting to note that a very large percentage of people who enter the armed forces now, something on the order of 78 or 79%, have a family member who has served.
Is it a pay issue? Like if they upped salaries by, let's say, 10 to 15% across the board, maybe that's a bit high. Let's say 10% across the board. I think you'd probably see more of an uptake. Or is it literally the conditions of the job aside from the pay? Like maybe the living conditions, the quarters that they stay in, the training,
But only 30% have a parent who served. And that number is coming down too. In an environment in which you could do just about anything and make some money, coming into the military seems to be an option that not many people are selecting.
Well, you make a good point there, right? And now there's this new competition for those individuals, for those potential recruits right now, where often going into the military is a way to sort of secure your future, your education would be guaranteed, it'd be paid for. But now there are a lot of other routes that young people in this country are finding to do that, separate from the military. And it's not just that. There's obviously sort of a fatigue associated with the recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So how do you flip the switch on this? How does the military change this trajectory?
Well, that takes leadership. Just about anything you want to accomplish, whether it's in this environment or any other kind of environment, takes leadership. And we have not had leaders who've done a very good job of convincing the rank and file of the American public that if you're lucky enough to live in a free country, you owe it something in the form of service.
I think as much as a draft where you are basically forced to join the military is unappealing, I guess, for some, that might be the only solution, unless there's a real big sort of maybe marketing drive and a change in policy, like changing the way things are done in the military. A shortcut would probably be a draft.
What's happened now is that so few people are serving, not because necessarily recruitment is down, but because the requirements of the service are such that we are taking only volunteers and we don't have a draft. Is that a wide gap has opened up between those who are serving and those who are being served. Statistically, most Americans do not know anybody in uniform. This is a really dangerous situation when you're separated from those who, in some cases, are risking their lives to make sure that you remain free and the United States achieves its foreign policy objectives.
Because this information is public knowledge, so America's enemies will know this, and it might embolden them because they're thinking, oh, America can't recruit soldiers. Maybe they're a bit weaker militarily.
The only way this will change is through leadership. It's interesting to note, for example, that more people were killed on 9/11 in New York City than were killed at Pearl Harbor. And yet on the 8th of December, 1941, hundreds of thousands of young people streamed to reception stations to go defend the country. That did not happen after 9/11. At the end of the day, I go back to what I said before. It takes leadership.
Right.
I mean, if you can't motivate people to go defend their country after 9/11, then it's going to take extraordinary leadership to change that.
At the same time, though, you have to remember that you're asking people to put their lives on the line as well. So it's a big ask. It's not like this is a real big decision that you want people to feel compelled to do. You don't want to force people into or guilt trip them into.
Yeah, notably, remarkably, a lot of the people you'd be recruiting, though, to be fighting or to joining the military were not even born when 9/11 took place now 22 years ago. And this is a bigger issue, not just about recruiting, Colonel Jack, but it's also really about America's military preparedness going forward with these emerging conflicts or competitions with China and Russia. So what does it mean for our readiness? If we went to war today, say China decides to go into Taiwan, how confident are you that we have the personnel that we need, plus personnel sort of in the pipeline in place?
But a lot of wars, I don't think wars are really fought like that anymore, are they? Like with just one army against the other. It's mainly sort of like weapons that dictate the wars now, no?
Well, one can't have very much confidence in the current circumstances. Among other things, the military's discovered that a fairly significant proportion of people who even want to come into the the are not physically capable of being in the military,
because they don't
or
reach
who
their
have rap
requirements.
sheets, drug problems, and so on. It's very, very difficult to even get people who are qualified who want to come in. The second thing to keep in mind is some services are far more vulnerable than others. You can make Army units smaller and so on, and they can or can't do their job. But at the end of the day, if you go into someplace like the Navy, which is heavily equipment-centric, you got to have people in the right military occupational specialties, and we don't have those.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, Colonel Jack Jacobs. Always a pleasure to be with you. And again, a happy holiday to you and your family here.
Very interesting. Quite concerning as well. And he made a good point near the end, the colonel, when he said that a lot of people who want to join just don't meet the physical requirements. I'm guessing maybe they weigh too much, or they've got, addictions and stuff like that that they haven't got out of their system. Because that is a very difficult one to to combat, because if you then lower the physical requirements just to allow enough people to come in, if a situation arises where they need to be deployed immediately and they can't physically carry, the equipment, or they can't, run or whatever for the required time, they then potentially become a liability for the other people in their unit. So, oh my God, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm trying to think of how you can quite quickly resolve this, and there isn't a fast solution unless you just pump more money in. And the US military's budget is already massive. I think it's like $1 trillion a year. So if you then wanted to up pay across the board, that would cost a lot. It would cost a lot. Like, anyone watching this, if you've got insight into this problem, please let me know in the comment section. I'm eager to hear your opinions. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.